Welcome to Guiding Families Forward Through Divorce.
Welcome to Guiding Families Forward Through Divorce. Divorce is never easy, but when emotions run high and conflict feels constant, it can be overwhelming. Ann Hamer, family law attorney and founding partner of Hamer and Taylor, helps Tennessee families navigate divorce with strategy and care. I'm Leanne Lyon, and today we are sharing practical ways to move through divorce with clarity, confidence, and peace of mind. Let's get started. Hello, Anne.
Hi, Leanne. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you. Anne, what defines a high conflict divorce? How do you recognize when a case is moving into that territory?
Well, it'll initially start with a lot of complaints. So the clients, the parties, I guess is we would say the two spouses, will be communicating with each other in ways that are not helpful, stressful, and they then bring that to their lawyers. He said blah 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 blah. She said this, that, and the other. It starts like that, and that's how we know things are possibly going to be ramped up. When it turns into what lawyers secretly call a train wreck is when they involve us in it and we have to get the courts involved because they literally just can't. Not only can they not agree on anything, but generally they can't even treat each other respectfully enough to move the litigation along without a judge having to intervene.
Got it. So, why is it so important to manage that conflict early rather than letting it escalate?
If you can get your client and the other lawyer can get their client to behave properly, um, let's try to get some legal solutions as opposed to the two of them trying to come up with solutions they're not good at. You can tone down the temperature of the case, and if you can tone down the temperature of the case, you can usually get people into a room, a posture of settlement a lot sooner if people aren't angry at each other.
That makes sense. Well, from your experience, what common mistakes do people make that fuel the conflict unnecessarily?
Ah, this is so sad. People worry about things that really, really, really do not matter. What everybody ought to be focused on first, if they're in a divorce with children, is the children and how they're feeling. That should be paramount to everything. If the children's situation is either non-existent or okay, then the money situation is also something that everyone needs to approach from a fairness standpoint, no matter which side you're on. Whatever is fair is what a court is going to do. But it can be really hard for people to understand, they're only seeing their side and they're really not seeing that the other side or their lawyer is giving them recommendations about something that is very, very fair.
So, how do you help clients maintain focus on those kind of long term goals rather than reacting just emotionally over everything in the moment?
So it's twofold. One, I'm a little bit of a psychologist in my job. I have to listen to the clients and let them vent and get out their frustrations because divorce is frustrating. It definitely is scary, whether you've got money or you're the person trying to get the money and just be able to continue to fund your lifestyle, right? So people are scared. They're very emotional. And as their attorney, I do need to listen to a fair amount of that, honestly, and let them vent that out. And then we can start to tone that down and discuss, well, what makes sense in the framework of a legal proceeding, because that's what divorce is. It's not a fight with your spouse over who, didn't buy new toothpaste at the Kroger. It's a judge coming in and saying, here's what I'm going to do with all your property and your children if you can't figure it out yourself. That tends to get people more into a framework uh, of let's get serious and not have a court make these decisions for us. One thing I can tell you, I can assure you, is the first time they do have a judge make those decisions, they generally don't want that to keep happening. Now, with that said, there are some people who are just litigious. They don't mind letting a court make those decisions for them. They can't think of any other way to do it. I don't know sometimes if it's a brain thing or an emotional thing, or just an intelligence standpoint. Some people just really can't evaluate the risks that brings in having a court make decisions like that, and they would prefer the court to do it. And in those cases, that's what we do. We let the court make the decision.
Are there specific strategies that you recommend for setting boundaries with a difficult or uncommunicative spouse?
There's that's interesting because that's two different things. With a difficult spouse, let's say it's lots and lots of texting, coming over to the house, not respecting boundaries, we do put boundaries in place. I would advise my client immediately, everything goes through the lawyers. It's expensive that way, but if you can't have a respectful communications with your spouse, soon to be ex, then you need to cut their text off, cut their email off. If you've got to communicate about children, there's a fantastic app called Our Family Wizard that we recommend. We're using it a lot in Tennessee, and I know they use it in other states. It's fantastic. That way, every single text, every single bit of communication goes there, and it's all recorded. So if I did have to bring it in and for a judge to see, look, my client's being unfairly harassed, it's all there in one document. That's if somebody's over uh, communicating. I would say imprudently and improperly communicating. If someone refuses to communicate, they will not co-parent, they just won't answer. Sometimes you do have to go to court and have the judge say, look, you've got 24 hours to respond. If you don't, mom's going to get to pick it, whatever it is. Let's say you email somebody and say, I need to know, I'm signing the baby up for soccer camp and I've got to know within 3 days and it's $500. Are you in or are you out? And you just get nothing, repeatedly nothing. Or, they don't email last minute. A court will say, look, we'll give you 24 hours to make that decision, but you're not going to keep stringing this other parent along. So there are different ways to handle that, depending on which spouse you have. Let's talk for a minute about the non-communicative spouse who's not being a very good co-parenter. If they're just ignoring you and not really interested in conversing about, wasn't that a cute play? Or, oh, I sent you pictures from the Easter egg hunt and you don't hear back from them. They're probably sending you a message that you need to set a boundary there. They've already set it, right? So they're just setting a boundary that says, communicate with me about important things. I don't feel comfortable communicating about all the little cute stuff we would have done when we were married. So there's different gradations of those types of communication styles, but there's some that you can just sort of ignore or learn to live with. And then there are some that probably need to get a court involved.
So, how can mediation or collaborative divorce approaches help de escalate conflict compared to traditional litigation?
I love mediation. In my state, it's mandatory. So, and for good reason, because again, it gives the parties themselves the agency to determine what happens to their family, what happens to their money, what happens to their property. And that's always the best way. You know yourself and you know your family way better than a judge does. So you want to go into mediation with an open mind and with the aim and goal of getting things settled at mediation. Doesn't work the first day, you can always go back. But it's a negotiation, and a lot of people don't negotiate in their daily living for a job, so they're not good at it. Or if they are good at it in their job, they may not be very good at it in their personal life because the things are just so personal. So getting into mediation with a skilled mediator, with lawyers you trust, really gives the person agency to make their own decisions about what matters to them.
For high net worth clients, what extra considerations come into play when managing conflict, like maybe privacy or business interests or public perception?
All three of those.
Uh,
Public perception for sure. If I've got a client who is either famous or well regarded in the community, someone who wants should want their own privacy and should want discretion with regard to how their personal affairs are handled, particularly their divorce, then we're always very careful. It's my motto to be discreet in your divorce. I believe in that a whole 100%. That's just that needs to be the first coming out of the gate. It's better for you, it's better for the children, and believe it or not, nobody really cares or wants to hear about it. Your friends are even going to get so sick of hearing about all that kind of stuff.
mhm.
So it with a high profile divorce, I guess I would say, a great example of a good one was Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. You never heard anything about it. They filed for divorce. End of story. I don't know what their parenting plan is. I don't know what their property division was. No one knows. It's just real quiet and done. Same with Reese Witherspoon and her husband. Nobody ever knew anything that happened there. Just got it done. And that's what it ought to be like. That should be the case for everybody from a school teacher to a movie star. Everybody's divorce should be like that. When it's not, it's when either you have a lawyer who's not being responsible about how things are, leaked to the press, or you have a client who's not being responsible about those things, who's going out on social media, making comments, making little snide remarks, or looking to profit later off some story. And those are things that need to be taken into consideration in a high conflict divorce that's also a high asset divorce.
Do you sometimes share those stories or those examples with your clients to kind of set the bar?
I do. I do. I have enough of them that I can explain. I don't think you want it to go down like this. And then they will say, oh, yes, I remember that. Or, oh, I didn't realize she did that. Or I didn't realize he did that. That was a result of what was going on in their personal life. And so, yes, I do try to encourage them that their behavior is very important. Leanne, I'm going to tell you, sometimes it just doesn't matter. People, you can explain to them the best way to do things, and they just don't care. So everybody's got their own personal agency in how they behave. But during a divorce, sometimes it's really hard to get through the emotions that your client's feeling and remind them of that they're making their own decisions, acting the way they want to act. They shouldn't be reacting to the other party.
Excellent points. How do you help clients navigate situations where the other party is using the legal process as a weapon?
Yeah, it can be a lot. And sometimes you get a lawyer on the other side who, for whatever reason, feels like I'll just do whatever the client says. And their client's mad and upset and is saying, file this pleading and I want to go to court and I want the judge to hear what he or she did and da 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 da. And there's not much you can do when the other lawyer is behind that. If it is the other party and the other lawyer is a reasonable lawyer and a good lawyer, you can generally sit down with them and say, let's work out an order. Let's work out an agreement. You don't have to get the full agreement. Divorces can take a long time. Some of them are quick, 3 months, 6 months. Some of them are 3 years. So if you're going through a protracted divorce and there's a lot of emotion, then getting smaller agreements along the way, is very, very helpful to the court and to the parties, because then the judge doesn't have to hear all these teeny tiny things, and the judge doesn't get prejudiced against the parties because of how they're behaving in these smaller things. Here's an example. If, let's say, I'm representing a CEO and he's a genius CEO, absolutely brilliant, and he's super honest, impeccable, from a educational and a reputational standpoint. And I really, really want him to be able to come in, explain the party's finances, the business valuation, what he's done to build that business. And I want him to have all that credibility with a judge. But he's terrible as a dad. Then I don't want to have to get in front of the judge arguing about my client's bad behavior as a dad, when what's really important from our case standpoint, right, is going to be him coming in there with a lot of credibility with regard to the family finance. That's when it's smart to get in with your opposing counsel and just say, look, let's try to get an agreement on this. Because I don't want my guy in there looking bad when he's a really good guy in a million other ways. This just tends to be an Achilles heel.
Right. Makes sense. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, and this is for somebody listening right now who's feeling overwhelmed by conflict, what reassurance or first steps would you suggest to help them move forward with some strategy?
Well, let's start with reassurance. It will be over. Okay. Divorces happen. Eventually, it will either get settled or go to court. So it will end. It will end. You have to have a lawyer who's willing to hang in there, and you have to have a lawyer who's willing to fight through it and is giving you the attention on that you need for your own peace of mind. So communicate with your lawyer. Make sure you're in constant communication with them. You go by email, shoot them a quick text, set up weekly meetings so that you know what's the strategy and where are we going? What's our goal? And I have clients ask me that all the time. I mean, I probably get emails all week long from everybody. What's the next step? What's the goal? And that's because lay people aren't supposed to know what the next step is or what the goal is or has the goal line moved. So you've got to be in communication with your lawyer all the time. It doesn't mean you need to blow their phone up and cost yourself $1 million. It just means keep that communication line open so that you know what's happening and what's happening next. And sadly, in a high conflict case like that, a lot's probably happening. But the best thing is for the lawyers to work it out, let everybody get to agreements and try to stay out of court and keep the court out of it.
Well, that is it for today's episode. Thank you to our audience for joining us on Guiding Families Forward Through Divorce. If you're considering divorce in Tennessee and want to work with Ann and her team, visit hamertaylor.com or annhamerlaw.com to learn more. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might find it helpful. Thank you, Ann.
Thanks, Leanne. Good talking to you.
You too.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.